Today, we're going to be talking about pricing, specifically about looking and visualizing pricing. Frank has made an awesome tool that we're going to be demoing that you can use. It's open source. But Frank, do you want to give us your 1 minute origin story of what you do apart from living on islands?
Well, yeah, I'm not. Well, I'm on an island still. It's a
Yeah,
Great Britain
technically.
island, but yeah, it's slightly different. Yeah, that's my minute of glory. So I am Franck Contrepois. I am Chief Innovation Officer at Strategic Blue, which is a company I really enjoy because we focus on pricing, cloud pricing, and it was IT was not complex enough. I wanted to add some mechs into it, and pricing definitely does the trick. I'm also, on the FinOps Foundation. I'm one of the, I think 100 now FinOps pros. And
Mm.
I was happy to be selected to be one of the AWS ambassadors too. So that's my minute of glory. So on top of the island, which you probably want to talk about, unfortunately, I will go to pricing now.
Yes, yes. So let's get into like you said, like we said at the start, this is about your pricing tool that you've made.
Yes,
Let's give a bit of background about maybe why you made this and what
yes.
it does.
So, there are really what we're going to see are really two tools that I've created that are all based on AWS pricing, and it all starts because I think it's an instinct. Curiosity is an instinct, and it helps me understand always more to go just behind what people or companies are presenting to you. In this case, with the pricing, what can you understand on top of what just is the pricing of an instance? Are there strange things happening? And if you see strange behaviors, and graphs are perfect to show you those kind of change of behavior, what can you find as an hypothesis or testing thing? So it's all really based on curiosity to start with. It's part of what I do. Also, let's say, as a living, it helps me understand. And as innovation, part of my job is to make sure that I go into I'm not surprised by change. So the more I understand ahead of time, hopefully with kind of pricing being one of the big things for me, I managed to better understand how things work. And
Yeah.
so I created tools around this. One is I will show you, but yeah, any questions, Steph? Because I just
Yeah, yeah. Well, so
blurbed.
yeah, let's before we demo it, just to highlight like the pricing element, I think is a really good point. Like giving you more information so that when you make decisions up front, and that's where a lot of this comes from, right? Is making sure that you know what's going on with the pricing
Yes,
information. So when you decide to deploy in a certain region or with a certain instance type, you should understand what will happen in your cost explorer or your CURT and then in your bill so that you
exactly.
cannot make any surprises. Just before we move into the demo, just some shout outs. Steph is Eminem number one fan. Just as a funny anecdote on Eminem, just saying, I just got an email saying Eminem Amia, and I got really excited for a brief second before I realized that it was modernization and migration. I just was like, All right, and one last question before we demo. Great topic. Frank, did you build this AWS pricing tool? So did you build it? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. It's mostly you're going to see there is one which is a website, and that website is based on Hugo, so it is a completely static website. The graphs are generated from me extracting data using AWS technology at the back end, and then analyzing it. And there is a second tool that we'll see slightly later, which is called Observable. That is a way to present graphs, so to do research on graph in a very nice way. So I'm using that, but then again, all the code I created is completely available there.
Amazing. Good plug for that. Right. Do you want to bring up your share screen?
Yes.
And as a reminder, while he's doing that, if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. Or if you're watching us on demand, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, any of those, then please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe as always. Right. Let's bring up this share screen. So
Can you
in
see
this
the screen?
demo, yes, in this demo, you're going to be showing us about the tool that you have made and
Yes.
what kind of data it showcases.
So the first, yes, the idea in this case is I've started with the difference between regions, between services of AWS services and instances. And for each one of them, I've tried to find some interesting statistics and graphs. So the first one, for example, very simple. The title it goes through everything. Those are all the regions, and it shows you the price of something that is always available, which is S3 standard first gig. Okay, so I needed to
Mhm.
find something that was available everywhere, and you can see that most regions are roughly in the same price range, but with three outliers, which is US Gov and Sao Paulo.
Mhm.
And you'll discover that Sao Paulo is almost always the very costly one. And I did the same for T3 micros because they are roughly the same. They are also available in all regions and something that people will use. And so you can see how, in this case, the graph is slightly different. So there is no direct correlation. It's not that S3 is priced in exactly the same way as VMs, for example. So that was one of the things I've seen. And we've said about Gov Cloud, I found it very interesting, and I'm going to also present a new hypothesis, that it is at
Oh.
the top for cost for S3, but it's in the middle for running T3.
Ah,
So
interesting. So it's not always, you can't always assume it would be maybe a higher price in comparison. Interesting.
exactly, that they would be ordered in the same way. And what I think this is the part that I find interesting is you start building hypotheses and you say, okay, if I am in a region which is specific to for saving data, which is government data, that's the most important bit. Probably all the investment and need for security and compliance is on the data, not on how you run a VM. And
Mm,
so
and
AWS pass that discount back to the government. Say, hey, VMs, we don't need to do much work there, just normal price. Data, sorry, but yeah, FedRAMP is expensive.
interesting. I just realized I made the same noise as this person. No, I'm glad that we're all learning. Thank you for the comments. Okay, continue.
So then I went to well, the one it is interesting is number of service per region, and so there is always an assumption that US East one, at least for me, has everything, and you can see that it is by far yes 209 services, and this is data from the 1st of February because the data is re-updated every month. But then you look at this graph, which I'm not ordering. We discussed it on the previously. I love the Space Invader style.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just seeing faces in it now. It's the brain thing of like what's that ink block test kind of vibe that it's producing.
exactly. And but then you find the outliers and you say, what is this? And you say, oh, Deep Racer is only in US East 1. But you see that there is something that is not in US East 1. What's that? And so it's Device Farm, which is US West 2. So these kind of graphs, that's again, it helps me find things, find outliers. The graph using graphs really help understanding better. And if you go on those graphs, if you click on this website, so the website is aws.franccontrepois.com, very megalomaniac, you can go and get everything. You can even you can see the source of this graph, which is just a JSON document that uses an open source library called VegaLite to represent things. You can even go to an editor, which is in Vega. I'm not going to do it now, but you can go into that editor and change things. If you want to see it organized differently, if you manage to put a bigger font, let me know. I'm still struggling with that. But overall, that was one of the things. And the other you will see, or the graph that I did, which is very interesting quite often, is which region has which instance type.
Oh yeah.
And that's another one which was it's I have also a podcast what's new in cloud FinOps, and part of
Don't
this
worry,
is all
we'll touch about that later, guys. Don't worry. We can tell you how to get more Frank because Frank getting some love in the comments, which I'll show in a sec.
and you will see that and we have all those new we look at the news and you have we have this released in 3 new version in this instance type released in 3 new regions, and you have a look at that. And so that's where I check things happening, and I have an understanding. Again, you can see the outliers. So
Mhm.
that is everything looking from the region's point of view. I've done the same for
Oh, Frank, before you move
yes,
on,
yes,
question, how often is this data refreshed?
monthly for now. So every month, download all the AWS data, all the best pricing data, do some analysis just to limit the size. I don't want to
Oh,
be
do you know
get
what
it
would
out.
be while you say that,
Yes.
let let's just do a quick poll because I want to know who has actually tried to download and open the EC2 pricing data. Because that thing is almost like Kerr-like with the size of it. It's huge. So
Yes.
1 in the chat for yes, 2 in the chat for no. Some people have like it just as a warning, like you could try, but the index file is huge, and I think it's definitely crashed my laptop before. So advertising Frank's tool even more so you don't have to deal with the EC2 pricing is definitely a big thing.
Yeah. And recently, and I'm going to show it, I've done a research on the last 5 years, and I think that file grew in the last 5 years something like 10 times.
Wow,
The size
really?
is
Alright,
yes.
keep going. Because one thing we did talk about was looking about somebody asking the question of like, has Amazon pricing gone up? That was something we spoke
Yes.
about a lot, wasn't it?
So I'm going to just finish fast this so that people can have a
Oh, yeah, so keep going, keep going.
have an idea. So this is services and region. We explain the stuff, but then you can just go and see where one service is running. So if you want to know where you're going to get your, I don't know, Cognito, here we go. It's almost everywhere. So that was mostly the only graph done for services, but there are many. And instances is quite an interesting one. So those are all the instances on Linux. So all their prices, etc., and region. But if you select one thing, it will show you the different generations and the price for each region of that specific generation. So quite often you will see that there are blocks. For example, in this
Mhm.
case, the D3EN is cheaper in those two regions, quite noticeably cheaper than this block, etc. So as usual, you can go there, have a look, have an understanding the instances you're using, where are they based, and what are the best regions for them, etc., and how this is evolving. Potentially, you can understand that the D2 was way more expensive than the D3, for example. Quite nice. So yeah,
Ah,
that's the elaboration, and I use all the data that this that I generate for this website is also then used in the new one I'm going to show you. So the data, this website behind has also all the data, and it's all in S3 static website. This is the one you were talking about. So let me see.
ah,
So this is
and
a tool which is so yeah, it's free. It's based on Plot, which is an open source library. The website is called Observable. They are also the makers of D3, which is a very well known 3D graph for JavaScript
mhm.
library. And in this case, they've created something like the library or the notebooks for Python. So you can just write
Ah,
stuff. You can just write stuff in here but then you can do their specialized library to do elaboration of data. So in this case, you see I have the data from 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and I'm all putting them all in one big block. That's the idea. And then I'm elaborating that data and you can see everything. So all the code is always available. Just open and you get the
ah,
code.
handy.
So you can see it, and in the same way, you can see the graphs. So underneath, that's how I generated this graph. Um, but the graph in this case was quite interesting. Was to say, okay, I'm going to see all 2x large. So I've said like every instance type, 2x large in US East 1, and see how the price has evolved. So you can see some instances just like I don't remember how you call this one, trainer one, but some have just appeared recently.
Just magically appeared new instances.
Yay! But but you can see that everything's just flat except
Yeah.
for one.
What's the one that goes down?
And that's exactly the question I was having. And so I say, I did a tool which is called
Ah,
normalize. Is put everyone at zero at the same level. Everyone's there, and but the only one moving is the inf one. It's inference one, which is quite new and seems to have
interesting.
dropped by quite a lot.
Yeah, but to answer the question, AWS pricing
Do
stationary. So
not.
anybody that's thinking that it's going up, the
Yes.
data, Frank has shown the data. Also, we got a question for you, Frank.
Yes.
Can metrics can metrics of the graphs be modified by a certain timestamp, like a view 1 day, 1 week kind of statistic? I assume
Yes.
for either this one or in the other website.
So no, repeat the question. Sorry.
Can you do it per day, per week, per month for all of your data? Can you
Oh,
kind of
in
zoom in
theory.
and out?
So Yes. So the data, this is pricing data. So it doesn't change per week. It's not usage data. It's not your usage data. This is pricing data. So usually it changes once a month, roughly, which is why I collected once a month too. Um, so I have a monthly granularity to it. So I'm not
Okay.
sure. But if it was your usage and you were using this tool, yes, you could use whatever you wanted
Right,
to
right, right. That
to
makes
go.
sense. Yeah.
If I
Awesome.
wanted to have every single change of data, which seems to be very, I would have to download. It's possible there is an index. So when you download the stuff, as Steph said, you have an index. You have all the possible combination, and you can start downloading quantities. This was a fast analysis. So this took me a couple of hours, 1 or 2 hours, because at reInvent, someone was saying, "Oh yeah, prices increased," and I said, "I don't believe so, but let me make sure." And
Sure, I guess
so
haters. Oh, John has provided the infra is accelerated compute for ML, and if you want to learn anything else about it, you can check out the URL just there.
here we
Awesome,
go. And it's cheaper
awesome.
than before.
Love it.
But one thing which was very interesting, and I keep it um, approximate, but it gives you good enough. For example, is from the data, what I really like with AWS is that they really pass you exact. They don't do markup for lots of things, including in this case license
Mm,
costs. So, for example, I was able to. I was trying to understand how much is a Windows license. How much do we pay for a Windows license? And so it explains it all there. I'm not going to go into the detail, but a Windows license is the VM price of a Windows VM minus the Linux VM price. And that's what I've tried to see if that makes sense. It's a
ah,
very simple equation.
yeah.
And so I was trying to start doing that. And you end up effectively seeing that everything, like 90 something percent, end up here. And remember that all those numbers are usually 12 decimals. And so there are some approximation errors. But as usual, I was also interested in what is that stuff? What is the small bit there? And so you can read it. We can go into the detail. The interesting thing was that, if I remember well, the T2, for example, the T2 and T3, which have different change, the cost of the Windows license will change depending on if they have credit or not, or how the CPU is used. But for everything else, there is only one price for Windows license all over the place, which is $0.45 an hour, I think.
I love
So
how specific like it's 0 point. This is my kind of number where it's like that will be in your head forever. Like you just remember this specific pricing.
yes, and it's for all regions. It's for absolutely everything. And so overall, it helps understand if you have multiple options. For example, we talked about a migration before. Do you move your licenses or not? Might also depend on, is it worth it?
Mhm.
Because on the other
Yeah.
side, if you want to move your license, you need to make a metal. You need so anyway. So I did some research like this. I did for Windows. I did for Red Hat. I did for SQL Server. And at the beginning, you have the summary uh, of my discoveries. But yeah, I always try to make it. Yeah, this one is lots of nice graphs, but complicated. But yeah, overall, this is what I'm trying to convey and to explain, and to hopefully people can fork this code, create their own book, or add some comments to it, or tell me what they'd like to see, because I'd love
Yeah.
to have more.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's a great shout. Like everyone watching, please go and kind of have a look at the code. I think there's some people like John is watching who I think is going to be probably looking at this now because he's got his brain like, oh my God, the power of pricing data. This is what we can do with it. He's super excited. I can feel it. John's like, lol. I know you so well, John. But yeah, okay. Anything else on this before we can touch on our next little topic?
Well, no, just this one. I love this graph. I don't know why exactly. So if you see 1 point, it means that the price per vCPU is the same for all sizes. So that's one other good thing with AWS is you do to a double X large, it's going to cost double than an X large, or four, it's going to be, and it's always consistent.
Mhm.
Except for some of them, and you can see them here, the G family, it's because they are using the price is also influenced by the GPUs,
Okay.
or the storage one. I will also usually have the HPC will have different pricing. So as I say, it you see the anomalies, and then it's possible to think it helps drive the thinking to get to probably the right answer.
Okay, all right. So let's bring up Richard. Do you want to share your screen of our summary points? As always, Richard has been listening and comes up with a summary, which I will read without knowing what he's saying. So it's always a fun, exciting a summary of what we've been talking about. Number one, simple overview for instances per region. Exactly, great way to look at stuff. Less stress, more success versus dealing with EC2 pricing file. 100% agree. If you don't believe me, go look for the pricing file and try and open it.
Brilliant.
AWS price, yeah, exactly. AWS price is not going up. Frank has spoken. He has shown us. Frank, thank you so much for coming on.